Some people collect art, others collect addresses. But for Rihanna, each house was never about the walls. It was about who she was becoming inside them. From Barbados to Beverly Hills, London to the Hamptons, this isn't a story about real estate. It's a map of transformation, a billion-dollar journey written in doorways. Act 1. The Geography of Ambition. 2009, 21 years old, already a chart-topping artist, she buys her first house, Beverly Hills, 706 square meters, $13.8 million. The numbers sound impressive, but here's what the listing didn't say. This was the first time a girl from Barbados who grew up in a bungalow got to choose her own ceiling. That's not luxury, that's arrival. Because in those early years, the houses weren't investments, they were proof. Proof that the girl who auditioned for Jay-Z at 16 could now own the same streets where legends lived. She bought a second mansion shortly after, $10 million. Built in the 1930s, previously owned by Mary Sheldon, a writer's home. Maybe that meant something. Maybe she knew even then that her story wouldn't just be sung, it would be built, brick by brick. Act 2. The Architecture of Identity. 2018. London, St. John's Wood. A historic 19th century estate, 8 bedrooms, 580 square meters, $25,000 per week. She lived there in silence. The world didn't know until someone noticed a Sainsbury's bag in an Instagram photo. The richest female musician in the world shopping at a grocery chain. That's the thing about Rihanna's real estate story. It's never been about showing off. It's been about disappearing. In London, she wasn't the pop star. She was the woman renting a house near Abbey Road, walking the same crosswalk the Beatles made famous, living quietly, working on Fenty, building an empire in a city that didn't care about her Billboard stats. Because here's what most people miss. Every time she moved, she was shedding a version of herself. The Beverly Hills homes were about proving she belonged. The London estate was about proving she didn't need to. Act 3. The Fortress and the Cost of Privacy. 2017. Hollywood Hills, The Fortress. That's not a nickname, that's what it's actually called. $930,000, 680 square meters, designed by David Lawrence Gray. 930 square meters of steel beams, transparent walls, and a guest house with 2 bedrooms. A fortress with transparent walls. Think about that. By this point in her career, Rihanna had been followed, photographed, analyzed, criticized, romanticized, traumatized. This house wasn't about style, it was about survival. When you're that famous, privacy isn't a luxury, it's oxygen. And this house, with its high gates and Sunset Strip seclusion, was her breathing room. She eventually rented it out for $35,000 a month, because even fortresses can become cages. Act 4. Manhattan and the Illusion of Escape. 2013. Manhattan, Chinatown. Of all the places Rihanna could have chosen in New York, she picked Chinatown. Not the Upper East Side, not Tribeca, Chinatown. $50,000 a month, 650 square meters, 2 floors connected by a floating staircase, a 200 square meter terrace, views of the Empire State Building. But here's what's fascinating. She rented from Antoine Verglas, a fashion photographer, someone who understood that life is about the frame, not just what's inside it. The apartment had 13-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, a chef's kitchen, a bar, everything you'd need to host the world or hide from it. Because that's the duality of fame. You build spaces to gather and use them to isolate. You have a terrace overlooking the city, and you stand there alone. Rihanna's Manhattan chapter wasn't long, but it mattered because it proved something important. No matter how high you climb, you still need ground beneath you. V. Going home, Barbados. 2013, she went home. $22 million, Sandy Lane, one of 8 condominiums at Barbados's most iconic hotel. 5 en-suite bedrooms, each with its own patio, private gym, swimming pool, Victorian pillars, Greek architectural details. But none of that is why it matters. This is where she started, Barbados, the island that raised her, the place she left to become Rihanna. And now she could buy the coastline. There's something poetic about that, about returning to the place that made you, not as the girl who escaped, but as the woman who conquered. She didn't just buy a house, she bought her childhood skyline. And maybe that's the most expensive purchase of all. Not the mansion, the closure. VII, the rental years, a different kind of wealth. 2020, the Hamptons, $415,000 for 1 month. Let that sink in. 750 square meters, 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a rooftop patio. By this point in her life, Rihanna had stopped buying. She was renting, and that's not a downgrade, that's evolution. Because ownership isn't always freedom. Sometimes freedom is knowing you can leave. VIII, the empire beyond the estate. Here's what the real estate listings won't tell you. Rihanna is worth $1.7 billion, but only a fraction of that came from music. $1.4 billion, Fenty Beauty. $270 million, Savage x Fenty. She didn't just buy houses, she built industries, and that's the real story. The houses were never the empire, they were the rest stops, the places she recharged between revolutions. Because while everyone was counting bedrooms, she was counting impact. While they measured square footage, she measured influence. The Wiltshire Corridor condo, $925,000, 185 square meters. She still owns it, not because it's glamorous, but because it's hers, and she doesn't let go.